Hey folks, how are things going? We're about halfway through the quarter, and hopefully you've noticed that your next writing project requires you to do a little light scholarly research. So in addition to the body of text you choose to analyze, whether they be Reddit posts or television shows or commentary around television shows or whatever, I'm also asking that you draw from two scholarly sources, so two articles and a peer-reviewed journal. And if you have any questions about what that means, look up peer review. Make sure you're familiar with the term before you move forward, right? So the purpose of this video is to help you find that stuff, right? To give you some advice about how to do scholarly research based on my lifetime of experience of doing it, right? So we're going to start with Google Scholar. We're going to talk a little bit about Google Scholar and how it works. Give you some advice about how to use that more effectively. When we're finished with that, we are going to move on and talk about citation management systems, which if you go into graduate school or anything like that, you will thank me later that I showed you how to use these, right? And when we're finished, I'm going to show you some particular scholarly journals that I think you'll find useful. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to use Google Scholar as our main search engine here. There are reasons for that, and I feel like I need to explain this just because a lot of professors tend to crap on Google Scholar, and I think it's a really useful resource, and so I want to encourage you to use it. So what Google Scholar has done is they've taken their search algorithms that they've applied so successfully to the web space, right? And they've basically imported it to the scholarly space, right? So just like websites that are viewed more often typically appear at the top of your Google search page, articles that are cited more frequently typically appear on your Google Scholar page, right? So the more prominent and respected the article is, the higher it'll appear in your search results. And so I think it's always a good place to start with any research project. You may have to go into more specialized databases later, but I always find that awkward. I find them clunky and difficult to use and so forth. And Google Scholar is much more wonderful in that regard, right? So anyway, I just want to show you some features it has that you may not have noticed to help you during the research process. So we're going to go ahead and do a real quick search here. We're going to do look at vaccine promotion. So hopefully one of the things you've noticed is that I'm very interested in pseudoscience and scientific misinformation and those kinds of things. And so one thing I've done a little reading on is how to change the mind of anti-vaxxers and that sort of thing. So I'm going to go ahead and search for this, and you're going to notice that the very first source that appears is this really wonderful study organized by Benjamin Nihon, who is a political scientist that does a lot of research on misinformation and what effect that has on people and so forth. And so I'm going to go ahead and start just by looking at that. I want to go ahead and take a look at it real quick. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the PDF thing here and open it up, right? So when you begin a research project, one of the first things you're always doing, especially when you're in a new area, is you're looking for an article that can sort of serve as a gateway into the field, right? So you're looking for an article that might not be exactly what you want, but is close enough, and you can use it to find additional resources on the topic, right? And so if we're interested in vaccine promotion, this would be that kind of source, right? This is obviously a really well done study. The person clearly knows their material, right? And we could use this as a gateway into a project on vaccine messaging, right? So the first thing I'm going to do, if I like this study and feel like it's well done, is I'm going to scroll down to the references page. Is one of the first things I'm going to look at. And I'm going to look through the references page for other materials that I might find interesting, right? And so I might look through here. There's one study here, this Kate one. This is a postmodern Pandora's box, anti-vaccine misinformation on the internet. That sounds really interesting, so I might go look that up. And usually I'm using mostly the titles to sort of guide me here, right? To find other things that I might want to look up, right? And I actually I pay really close attention to works cited pages, like most researchers do. And so this is a screenshot from a paper that I looked at. And as you can see, as I'm going through here, I'm sort of checking off things to look at later. And most of the stuff I check off turns out not to be useful. Like I would say 75% of it I don't end up using for any project, right? But the goal here is to kind of introduce me to the field, to get me used to the big names that are working in the area, and so on and so forth, right? And so it's really important. I think the first place to start is always to look at the study's reference page to get a better sense of what articles those people are citing, right? But in addition, that is not the only tool that you have available to you, right? In addition, Google Scholar has this really awesome feature called Cited By, right? And you can see that right here. You can see that area, that little button right here, right? And what this allows you to do is to look at all the sources that were published afterwards, after this article was published, that cited it in the process of putting together their research, right? And I find this incredibly useful, and often this is the way I find out contemporary research on a particular subject, right? And so if you click on the Cited By here, right, you can see a bunch of stuff comes up, and you can see right away the first thing you see here is social media and fake news in the 2016 election. So if I'm interested in that, that might be something that I can pull up and look at, right? And so don't forget to look at the Cited By feature as well. That's also tremendously useful, right? A couple other little things, remember that you can sort by date. I typically, especially the beginning of a project, I'll typically click the since 2016 or whatever, just to get the most recent research. And so just keep that in mind, right? Sometimes you have to go, especially for more niche, unusual projects, you're going to have to go beyond that. But that's, a good starting place is to look at the most recent research that you can find, right? So anyways, that's typically how I begin. I look for a good article, what I call the golden article, right? And that is a gateway into the research, and then I can use it to find more information on that particular subject, right? All right, the next thing I want to talk about is citation management software. I want to encourage you all to get used to using these programs, especially those of you who are heading to graduate school. You should get used to how to do it now, and that way you're saving yourself a bunch of time when you actually start doing big scholarly projects, right? Now, unfortunately, the way we teach you how to cite sources in like Writing 1 and Writing 2 is typically we give you citation manual, whether it's MLA or APA. We ask you to look up the type of source and then type it out by hand, right? And nobody, of course, does that. Nobody in a professional research setting types out all their sources by hand. I think I have like one colleague that does that, and he's insane. He definitely should not do that. Typically, what we do is we use citation management software, right? And these are programs that are basically designed to help researchers generate works cited pages, right? Now, the one I use is Zotero. That's the one that I like. It's open source and free, and I like those things. The other alternatives are EndNote, which is really expensive. Usually it's like over $200, I think. Mendeley is another alternative, which is free, but it's owned by the money-grubbing Elsevier, which is a scholarly publishing firm that the UC system's currently in conflict with. And so I prefer Zotero. I think that's the most accessible of all the options. Now, one thing that one limitation of Zotero is it doesn't have any cloud features. And so you got to pick like a master computer that you're going to store all your sources on. And mine is my computer at work, which of course is creating problems for me right now, right? And so I just want you to keep that in mind. I'm going to show you how Zotero looks, but I don't have all my sources loaded into it, and so you can't see it in its wondrous glory, right? So let me go ahead and pull Zotero over here so you can look at it, right? And so this is what it looks like, right? And there are a couple different ways you can add sources to Zotero, right? So one of them is you can do the old-fashioned way in a lot of ways, right? You can go to File, and you go to New Item, and you go to Journal Article, right? And then you'll see here I got to type in all the information by hand, right? So I could, title some analysis of some bullshit my teacher told me to write. So I'll put that in the title page, right? And then I'll have Smith and Kenny in the author section here, right? Publication, bullshit, United review, or bullshit review. There we go, right there. And we'll just put a date, 2005 or something like that, right? And so you can type it in by hand if you want to, right? And this is still more convenient to doing it just typing it into your works cited page because, of course, it'll allow you to generate a citation in whatever format that you prefer, right? So that's one way to do it, but the easier way to do it is you can use scholarly databases to import it automatically for you, right? So if we go back to Google Scholar and we look up our infamous vaccine effectiveness message area, right? You're going to see the article right here, and if you click on the quotation marks, what you're going to see is first thing, those of you who've never noticed this are probably going to kill me now, you'll notice that all the sources are cited automatically for you in different formats, right? But if you want to import it into your citation management software, you'll see there's some links here at the bottom that have a few different options, right? You don't see Zotero here. You got BibTeX, EndNotes, RefMan, and RefWorks, right? But RefMan works for Zotero, right? So you just go to click on it, right? It downloads this RAS file. You go ahead and click on it. It says, do you want to import this? And you click OK, right? And it says one item is imported, right? And that's under, where does it put this at? Oh, here it is. It's right here under effective messages and vaccine promotion. And if I want to just drag this to, I could just keep this here, right? And put all the rest of this stuff in with my Scholar art collection that I'm working on here, right? And so you can cite as many sources as you want, and it's really fast and convenient, right? So I could go back, I could do this message framing here, right? And I could go ahead and click on that, click on my RefMan, I'll click on my button. This is, do I want to import it? I could click OK. It makes a Scholar 2 there, and then I could drag it into this collection, right? And now I got 3 sources here. I could go ahead and delete this if I want to, right? So pretty convenient. Now, one thing I found to be the case is that Google Scholar's citations aren't always 100% accurate. And so if you want to get like the 100% accurate one, you can go to the library's databases, and I typically find that those are work perfectly fine, right? And so just keep that in mind. You may have to do some editing if you use Google Scholar's resources. If I have to be perfectly honest, I almost always use Google Scholars and then just edit it if I have to, right? All right, so then from there, let's say you want to create a bibliography, right? And so what you do is you go to, you right-click here, right? And you go to create bibliography from collection, right? And then you're going to see there's all these different citation styles that you could draw from, right? And so I'm going to go ahead and do, I don't know, IEEE or a modern, the Modern Language Association 8th edition. We'll do that one. And then I'm going to go ahead and click OK, right? And then it's going to have me save this file, right? Let me go ahead and save it to my desktop so I can find it easily, right? And then let me go ahead and open it here. So go and pull up. Oh, it's over here. Go ahead and let me go up to my desktop, and you're going to see how disorganized my desktop is because it's basically just a giant collection place for a bunch of stuff, right? And I'm going to go ahead and click on the citation and open it in Microsoft Word to show you what it looks like. And there you go. You got a beautiful, nicely formatted, works cited page that you can put directly into your text. And there I am, cited right there. It's beautiful, right? So anyway, so I highly recommend a piece of citation software. I think it's really useful, right? All right, as a final note, I want to look at a couple journals that you might find particularly interesting, and then I want to point you to the Campus VPN, which I think is a really useful tool that you're going to especially find helpful doing your research at home, right? So, so some journals I think you might consider looking at are, I think Rhetoric Society Quarterly might be very useful for a lot of you. It often deals with rhetoric in the public sphere. Rhetoric Review is also a big publication in my field that you might find helpful, right? And then finally, some of you may be interested in doing projects in the public understanding of science, and there's actually a journal dedicated to that topic as well, right? And so either any of these 3 publications may be useful to you as you go through your research, right? So that's just something to keep in mind. Finally, one thing I want to say is that research can often be frustrating when you're off the university's network, especially if you use Google Scholar. Very often you're going to find, free access to free articles off to the side over here, right? So this one here, The Ethics of Memoir, if I go ahead and click on it, it brings me to the Rhetoric Society Quarterly's article on that particular subject, right? But sometimes it won't. Sometimes you'll click on this and it'll ask you to pay for it, right? It'll ask you for like $50 or something. And nobody's going to spend that money for an article, especially given a lot of our libraries' databases have access to it, right? And so what you need to do if you're off campus and you want to make this a little easier on yourself is I recommend installing the Campus VPN, right? And basically, the Campus VPN provides you a tunnel to the university's network. So it's basically like you're on campus, is basically how it works, right? And so the way you find it, I'll put a link to it on Couch Space, but you just type in Campus VPN, right? And then it's going to bring you to this website for this program called Pulse Secure, right? And then you go ahead and download it. And then what it's going to do is in the lower right-hand corner of your computer, it's going to put this little S, right? And then all you got to do is right-click on it, go to UCSB Remote Access and click Connect, right? And then it's going to bring this up, and then it connects to the library's network, right? So I'll just give it a second for it to do this. All right, so it's connected now, right? And then I'll show you how that changes Google Scholar here. So I'm going to go ahead and refresh, right? And then what happens is if I click, so with this ethos and uptake, if I click the little right arrow, it's going to bring this new thing up. This is UC eLinks, right? And so if I click on that, what it's going to do is it's going to bring me to the library's website, right? And then I can click on the database that it's located in, right? And then it will bring me to the full copy of the article that way as well, right? So if you're having trouble finding something, without connecting to the campus's network, try using the Campus VPN. There's also other ways to go about it, but I think it's less convenient. I just have this installed on my computer, and whenever I need to do library research, I just click connect, right? So hopefully all this information is useful for you. If you have any questions or need any help during the research process, just let me know. Usually I use this class period to just sit along next to you and watch you do research and help you out as you have questions. Obviously I can't do that, so don't hesitate if you need something from me. So good luck on your library research, and where we talk textual analysis, and we do a short little peer review session.